My name is David Evans. I am a senior fellow at the Center for Global Development in the United States, and I study global education policies and interventions to see what works to help countries improve their learning outcomes. We hear so much about how many children are not learning. Today I spoke about an example of a reform in northeastern Brazil, the state of Ceará, where over the course of just more than 10 years, they were able to achieve dramatic improvements in the number of children who are learning to read in the early years, thus opening the pathway for those children to succeed in the rest of their school and the rest of their lives. So two key elements that led to the success of Ceará in northern Brazil were, first, making sure that everybody working in the education sector was focused on a single goal. In this case, the goal was making sure that every child can read by the time they finish the first years of primary school. And that meant that the tax incentives going from the state to the towns were oriented around learning. And it meant that the state provided lots of support and teaching to the towns so that they could help their teachers get their children to fluent literacy in those first grades. And so the first part was making sure that everyone was focused around this goal. The second part was this technical support, making sure that every teacher had the tools that they need to teach children to read in their first few years. Often you have in a system some excellent teachers, but also some teachers in rural areas who do not have much training. And so providing detailed guides for those teachers. So even if they don't know what to do, they can follow a detailed guide and at least get children to the very basic of reading with comprehension. That opens the doors for those children for the rest of their lives. One of the things that we see over and over again in many countries is that you have policies that are very well designed. And if you look at them on paper, they look excellent. And you say, of course this will result in wonderful impacts on children's learning. But then, after they've been implemented, nothing happens. And when you look at those interventions, what we see is so often the reason is because they were not implemented the way they were designed. So we've seen this in Uganda, where a very good well-designed intervention worked very well at a pilot with well-motivated teachers, but then when they tried to implement it with just teachers in the public schools in general, it had no effects. In fact, it even had some negative effects. And we've seen the same thing in many places. That doesn't mean that we just need to try harder on forcing people to follow the policy. It means we need to design policies that it is possible to implement even with teachers who don't have a lot of skills and school directors who are still learning how to do their job. We need policies that can help every teacher and every school. What I've seen at this conference today has been very heartening. What we see is that the Moroccan government is clearly committed to bringing together many of the best ideas from around the world. We've seen ideas from India to Kenya to Brazil to elsewhere to tell us how can we get every child learning. To me, that suggests a commitment on the part of the government, and I hope that we'll see that commitment maintained in the days and months and years to come, because achieving universal quality education for all children means a sustained commitment over time. And I see the beginnings of that right here in Morocco.